Did you have
Let's try it on here. Keep going. Well, thank you everyone for coming here today. We really, I know many of you, but my name is Jim Brown. I've been in the community since 2012, built in 2012, and I've been on the board for roughly 15 months now. A lot of volunteers, the staff has set all this up today. Also want to thank a lot of the volunteers that have been involved in this project and a lot of the committees. We have several committees where we've had tons of volunteers and people participating, including a finance committee, an HR committee, and a facilities committee. We formerly had another committee called the Camp and Recreation Committee, and that committee had overlap with some of the other committees. So we decided to form the committee just exclusively dedicated to improving the food and beverage services here at the camp. Since somewhere around 75% of the participants in the last survey expressed some level of dissatisfaction, so the board sees it as an obligation to not do nothing and do something about it. So we're going to talk about some different options today. The camp has really come a long way in the last few years. It's from my view, it's in better shape than it's ever been. From a reporting and results standpoint, improving the debt structure of the camp, keeping this 15-year-old place looking beautiful. It's taken a lot of work to be able to do that. We have a new GM, Sylvan. There is Sylvan over there, who is amazing at what he's done. He's improved the safety, the sanitation, the working conditions, and the logistics of this facility in a short period of time that he's been here. He's an amazing person. If you get to know him, I encourage that. The women love the way he talks because of his accent. I'm from West Virginia, so I don't understand what he says most of the time, but it sounds good when he says it. I also want to take a minute just to thank Ryan Chamberlain, because he's retired now from his volunteer work that he's done here largely. But I just want to say that I've observed him spending more time and saving more money for this camp over the last few years, filling in between general managers, working to clean up financing in our finances and our reporting, the things like cleaning up sewer lines with his bare hands. He's done a tremendous amount of work, and he's really glad, I think, to have some free time. So I just wanted to acknowledge one. So now the new committee, which I'm going to let Mike Chamberlain introduce here in a minute, with the sole charter of improving things here at the camp, the food and beverage. This committee will work in conjunction with the other committees to help formulate options and alternatives to improve the food and beverage services here. So they, just like with all the committees, they don't have authority. They're volunteers, and they work very hard on different options for us to solve the problems that you all have expressed to us. Being on the board is sort of a thankless job because, I find my obligation is to represent the majority of the community, which means by definition that somewhere between 0 and 49% of the people are unhappy with decisions that we make. But, the way I look at it, I find the polarization in our country today to be sad and unnecessary. I don't understand why we all can't have different opinions and work through those objectively and come up with solutions and still be patriots. And I think this community is better than that. This community is based upon neighbors and friends, and that's the spirit that we want to have here today. We're neighbors, we're friends, We're not perfect. We've got issues. No one has agendas. We're just trying to do something to make this place evolve to a point where it's better. So I appreciate that type of a spirit today. We will open it up for questions later on. And when you have a question, because the remote microphone had interference. So when you have a question, I'd like you to come up here and talk into this microphone, and then we're going to address the questions. We have a hard stop at noon. We have plenty of time, I think, to get through everything. And so that's really it. I can't tell you how profoundly gratifying it is to see so many people interested in this. So special. I'm grateful every day. We should all feel blessed to have such a unique community in a unique place. And let's work together today to talk about options. That's what it's about, is to talk about options, to talk about things that we've done so far. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic to my Chamberlain. The mic to Mike.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Chamberlain. I live over here in 1780. I've been here a lot over with my wife, Brooke, and our kids since late 2008, early 2012. I'd like to introduce the committee members for first, Andrea Data. She's been in the beginning, Danielle Harris as well, and we have Tom Rick. So those are the people that we're going to help answer any questions that you might have going forward. A couple things I want to address. First, I want to give you context. Look around. I actually did the math this morning. You represent 20% of the community. So if you look at the exact number of families that are represented today, that actually makes 20% of the 321 lots. So most people think it's probably a more dense population represented today, but it's exactly 20%. The other thing I want to sort of share with you is what the committee is and is not. And this goes back to what Jim talked about. We absolutely have no authority whatsoever. We have basically been chartered to address the number one issue with the camp, nothing more and nothing less. And our full focus is on the long-range plan. We don't get into anything regarding operational issues. We don't care whether somebody wants to add a new appliance, whether they want to add an additional tap down there at the expo. If you want to use a food truck, that's an operational staff issue. We just don't get involved in that. Ours is to address the systemic challenges that's existed for going on 10 years. Second, really providing the camp options from a feasibility perspective. The reality is, we have several committees now, and the committees, in my opinion, are there to serve at the pleasure of the board and the staff and allow them to be more productive. So we have to do our very best not to burden the staff by asking them for a ton of information or burden the board. So we've actually done the work ourselves. We have met with various clubs across the country to get their take on how they address the certain similar situations. We have met with McDowell and Burke County. We've met with grading companies, landscaping companies, surveyors, architects, builders, etc. But just to gather enough information that we can. But eventually we got to the point where we needed to engage a designer. And we thought about who best to engage. And these conversations actually started years ago with Ann Costello and I when we got together with him, frankly, at the beginning of COVID. And we brought back Bruce Johnson. And I've been working now with Bruce for a couple of years, just off and on theoretically what it might look like. But then all the discussion and all the opinions that everybody really had, I really hope you enjoyed the next 30 minutes. This is a fantastic. In 2006, we were just talking here a few minutes ago. He hasn't been back since in terms of addressing the community. So this is a great way to tell the story, talk to them about maybe the next phase, how to preserve the original intent, etc. So I'm going to ask you to do a couple things for me. The way the rest of today is going to go, as Jim laid out, Bruce is going to come up here and do a 20 to 25 minute presentation. I ask you that we let him do that uninterrupted. There will be a ton of time for Q&A, but let him go through the whole story. Jim will then come back up here and moderate our Q&A session, and we'll either direct those to a member of the committee, some member of the board, or Bruce. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Bruce Johnson. Stand over here so I can sort of read a few notes. But
I'd like to give you a very brief history of how I got involved and this happened. And just a little bit about me. I have been practicing for 50 years and had a firm in Raleigh with partners and employees, and moved to Asheville in 1990 with the goal of doing primarily residential work and no more employees, no more partners. And I went to graduate school at NC State, but I also went to undergrad at Carolina with a fine arts degree, so I always moved to Carolina. In the early 1900s, I don't know how many of you know how all this happened, but the early 1900s, Duke power there and power in lakes, and that exploded more in World War II. After World War II, in the probably sometime in the early 1960s, Duke realized they had a lot of property around all these lakes. It was becoming very valuable. So they decided to develop it. And in order to do that, they started a subsidiary company called Crescent Communities. And that was born, and they started developing primarily North and South Carolina. It's grown much more into residential. They are a full service development company. And when they started developing Lake James, I'm not sure how it happened, but they weren't all that careful about what they did. And in 2002 or 3, Burke and McDowell got fed up with some of the work they were doing, and they sued Crescent. And state put a moratorium on all their development. The settlement for that is they donated the land for the park across the street. Of course, all their property values went up as a result. And they decided they were going to upgrade to a much higher level of development. And the result of that was to develop this scene based around the national parks. And at that time, I was working on a project in Lake Toxaway. Let's see if I can get this to work. And it was probably one of the most interesting and challenging projects I had been involved with residentially. And it involved these huge logs that came from British Columbia. We went out there and actually handpicked logs with the builder and the owner. From the log company, it was the same one that ended up satisfying and supplying all this. And the builder, Steve Rogers, built this. And that got a lot of publicity. President Preston Jim asked me to come over and talk to them about what was going to happen here. And they decided, yeah, we're going to do this big national park theme. We want these big logs. And Jim showed me this book, which I didn't bring a copy because it's so heavy. It's about 2 inches thick. It's the original National Park Design Guideline. And that was the Bible for everything that you see in all 3 communities. 1780, Black Forest, and Old Wildlife Club. Not so much Old Wildlife because it was later, but it's not even in print anymore. And it showed everything from gate to bathrooms to how to do that through all the parks. And a lot of what you see came from those ideas. Absolutely. And the first community to do that we worked in was Black Forest. And that was kind of a test to see what they really wanted to continue with this. This is the, I don't know how many of you have been to Black Forest. This is the community cabin that we built that it was a lean-to before, and then there's a pavilion down at the lake, which is basically all logs and a fireplace. And it grew from there. First camp was the next thing to happen. It was Jim. I'm just saying first names here. The vice president was in charge of everything. Pretty much not much of a budget. I mean, they got the president to do what he wanted. This building is started out about 10 feet higher because that was the natural topography. He didn't want to be able to see the lake from the gym, so he ordered trucks to come in, hundreds of trucks. I don't know how many tons of dirt they removed to lower the building so you could see everything that was here now. That is basically how we got here. And like Mike said, about 4 years ago, we started some informal talks about how to add food service. We looked at the peninsula, which was going to be a very dramatic place to hanging out over the lake, but because of lots of problems of fire access, parking, everything else, that was dismissed. And I guess a couple of years ago, we got more serious and started talking about it. Which brings me to the newest version of what we're working on. And what we started with, and what I start with every project, a couple of you owners out there I've worked with over this, before you can figure out how to do something, you have to be very careful to determine what. And that's not just design and architecture, that's pretty much in any business. Most homeowners have a terrible time when they just start figuring out how to build a house. And they never sit down and determine what, with priorities and everything else. So when we started FBX, food service expansion, we started with a program. And so we're getting some pops, and I'm trying to avoid that. So the design program started with, these are just kind of a summary or bullet points of the things we went through. This is actually the handwritten program we worked with, and we started with connection. How we were going to attach to the lodge. And there was some initial discussion about, attachment right to the roof. For a lot of reasons that doesn't work. So we basically, the only place it can go is out there, and it has to be pulled away for structural reasons. And views, the access to the site, parking, I know that's a big consideration, and access to the new food service would be from here, but also a major access from the new parking area, which is very much in the flux and undeveloped. But the site plan, we sort of located something, but everything you see today is a concept. It's a very well-developed concept that has to go through many more stages before it ever becomes a building. size of the building. How would we do that without overpowering this? This building is just at 5,000 square feet. All of these logs are on a 12-foot grid. So it's 48 feet by 96 feet. And basically we started the design with the roof. Once you set up the roof, you just fit everything underneath it. And the advantage of this system is in this building, it's a little longer, but there's very little loads on anything on the floor. It all goes to the outside walls. So it makes the interior very flexible. And those three great big columns in the middle are the interior load there. So that was a principle of how we were going to approach, or how I put into the program to approach the new building. And the size was determined by a lot of things. 5,000 square feet, you build a building without a sprinkler system, and at all costs, we need to. That's just not almost impossible on a well system. So we started with about that and worked our way down. And that 5,000 square feet would be way too big if it was one roof like this. So one of the basic principles was the building needed to be divided up into roughly 3,000 square feet of each and 2,000 square feet of support, bathrooms, kitchen, all of that stuff. And to become almost two buildings. So we approached it with a 3,000 square foot roof. Simulate this, but not imitate. You can afford to do what you're seeing here with the logs. And, but the structural system, the simplicity of this, we can certainly. So that broke the building down into 3,000 square foot restaurant, which if you provide the number of people that can accommodate, so that's about 200. And committees, through discussions, decided we really want this building to be this, where it can open up at any time the weather is good for indoor and outdoor seating. Of course, that building is going to compete with the pool. So those issues have to be dealt with. But if you think of it, 100 people inside and 100 people outside, that's what we started with. That of course gets refined. And the next thing on the program, this is not necessarily in any order of priority, was the atmosphere, the flow, and it should be like this, but not the idea that probably have the bifold folding doors that open up. That was one of the criteria for the design, how to start laying out the floor plan. The bar area needed to be open both inside and out. That was a very important thing. And then interestingly enough, when they did a lot of research, whether it's good or bad, it turns out that in most of restaurant design, the most important place for eating, for socializing, and the experience is we should have built it bigger. So that's kind of where that bar became the focus in terms of the design. and how it would fit in to the other space, to the outside. So all of these things, I am careful to write them down, review them with the committee before we ever get to starting to draw. And with some iterations, you know, we got there. We wanted to be sure and have radiant heat like this so that even in cooler times, that zone outside could be picked up if you wanted to have people eating out there. You know, that's a lifestyle and cost decision, because obviously it costs more to do that in dead of winter. Flexible seating, televisions in the bar. We were trying to do maybe 30 seats around the bar, but all that obviously is still in the open. And the structure. That group. And in this case, it's probably not, it's going to be similar, smaller, but it certainly won't be logs. If we can afford it, we will probably do a timber frame like this, except this is all stick-built timber frame. It came from British Columbia like the other, like that house, but it was site-built. And some of this was assembled in British Columbia. The advantage of a tree, I worked with Harmony and Food a lot. And some of the houses here that they can actually design, build, engineer a whole, build it on site, take it apart, bring it down, and erect it. And it's a very efficient way to put up a smaller roof and get the same effect. So we got the program done and agreed to, and I started designing. And one of the images that they asked me to look at was open, inside, outside, very open inside, no interior walls. All of that would be pushed back into support spaces. So the first thing I do, whether it's a commercial building or a house, is look at the site and what demands the site is going to put on the building. Quick sketches to just start laying out where we're going to add, where we might put in future parking, and what that building had to respond to in terms of the views, the sun. That is part of that initial conceptual work. The next stage was a quick, what I would call a study concept, how it relates to the main building. And this was one of the early ones where it was much closer to the main building than the final design. And it shows the roof, the 3,000 square foot roof, and the support facility, which is actually in commercial terms, a flat roof. I'm trying to make that whole structure so all you see when most of the time is the main building like this. Roof structure laid out. This is laid out enough that I had already talked to Harmony about this, and with something as simple as this sketch and that section drawing, they could actually put together a fairly firm price early on to start budgeting the building. I'm going to try and go back a little bit. This was the early stages of the design about things would fit. And locating the bar. The bar is basically the center of the building, the focus. It's basically just space around that where you can put any number of tables that aren't fixed. Booths were not an option. They wanted everything to be flexible for different functions, including weddings, that sort of thing. The bar is generator of the economy. You can actually generate a lot of money through the car. That's probably know that. And three-dimensionally, it is tying loose together things. The eave height for this building, the edge of the roof of the outside wall, is exactly the same as this. So it's visually going to line up, but it's, I think now it's at least almost 50 feet away, and you walk to it under a covered link, but not enclosed, so you don't get wet from here. Most of the people might be coming from. We have part of that covered, but that's if the parking ends up being where we're proposing, is it a little ways down the road. There's quite a great change between the ground and the parking, and so you have to come down a certain level of path, and then actually on a bridge, because all of this has to be handicap accessible. So preliminary dimensional drawings, a more refined floor plan showing how walls and doors and windows are going to fit. I started working more on the bar, and because you can't have those, it's awkward to have those bifold doors in a bar where you're trying to serve things. Hoping there will be enough budget to actually have, there are several companies, it's almost like a garage, a vertical garage door. It just slides up on tracks on the motor up and down, so you can have a fairly large window that's either there in the winter or up into the ground. And the next stage was was what you've seen around here, a more decorated visual floor plan about what is proposed, some of the tables, how they would fit, the beginnings of the support spaces, bathrooms, stairs, kitchen area, elevator. Advantage of the site out there is we can reduce the amount of square footage of the actual kitchen area, because all of those things that feed the kitchen can go in a 5,000 square foot basement, which is the footprint of the building. So the big refrigerated storage, any secondary offices, all of that can go in the basement. And we've set the, you'll see it on the movie and the 3D, there is an actual truck door planned on the north side where they can actually back a truck up and unload stuff into the basement. And the next stage was showing how all this would fit on the site. You've probably seen some of this, and trying to make it blend, but it has its own space. It actually supposed to be amphitheater, so there was a lot of suggestions about, gosh, they could sit in the restaurant, eat, have a drink, and see what's going on in the amphitheater and be very close. I don't want to get much more technical than that. This is the rendering again that you've all seen, and there's the truck door. And it does have, this is what I would call a very refined conceptual design. the next stage for this, you decide to do it, is it has to go to construction documents and enormous amount of site analysis. All the utilities come down between this building and the restaurant, and we need to make sure we're far enough away. He's dealing with handicap access, all the codes, this has to be, that all comes later during the construction drawing process. The first phase of that is schematic design, and it is beginning negotiations with an architecture firm that I work with, because I'm not going to be the architect of record, which is the one who produces the documents and is responsible for the liability of the project. I'm what you call the design architect, and I've worked with him before. The builder, the committee is talking to is Steve Rogers, who built everything you see out here in Black Forest. Probably, I've been working with Steve since the early 1990s, and he builds every project, whether it's a house or a commercial building, like it's his own house. So you will get everything you see here and then some in the new building. So that's kind of the next steps, and I guess we're ready for questions.
Following this meeting, there'll be a survey, a detailed survey that's going to be sent out to that we've been working on now for several weeks to capture feedback from everyone. In the meantime, if you have a question, come on up, because unfortunately this microphone only goes so far, and I'm just going to hold the microphone and you can ask your question.
Justify flushing this out when you get 250% of the residents who are interested in it.
How could they justify flushing this out if fewer than 50% of the residents expressed an interest in pursuing this?
Yeah. What drove this is that we've had issues with food and beverage since we started with this camp. And the last survey that we did was 2022, and the participants in that survey, only 25% of the people were satisfied with the food and beverage service. That was it. So this is an option that we're working on. The board can't not do anything. We have to come up with solutions. So we're trying to come up with options. You all will participate with feedback. So understand that this work is being done by volunteers, and we're trying to solve a problem for the majority. We fully expect that there will be plenty of people on two sides of the fence here, and to do what the majority of this community do. We haven't even started getting into the financing options of this, how it will be financed, how it will be paid for. We've started, the finance committee has started to work on some solutions for that. All of that is preliminary. So this is very conceptual. We spent very little money on what we've done. If you have a question, come on up.
Oh, sorry. How do you propose using this building in that plan?
You want me to keep answering questions? The way I would look at it, and then I'll let Bruce give you the real answer, is we want to be able to keep this still available for people coming in wet, with swimsuits, kids, and those kinds of things, so that, you know, if you want to have a controlled environment to dine 12 months out of the year, that would be for over here. But this would still be snacks and things, drinks for the pool area. Is that the right answer, Bruce?
Quite a bit of discussion at the beginning was what would happen to this kitchen with a restaurant and how it would serve. And the original design of this building that was basically like a microwave kitchen. And it is not, and I hesitate to say this, it is not a code compliant kitchen. You're not even that exhaust vent in there. So there's all kinds of things that have to be solved with that. And the initial discussion in it was the primary source of food for this would be the new restaurant, how to get that over to here. And we talked about conveyor belts and everything, but basically that walkway going from here over there for guests, right on the other side of the wall is a covered walkway that comes out of the kitchen. That food is carried over and passed into the existing. And then there's been some discussions about how to update that and modify it for a new use, but very preliminary. But the primary source of food for this, for any event, would be the new restaurant. Getting that up to code.
Camera alerts keep going off.
What options did you building facility, putting a restaurant in there, moving that up by the pickleball? What options have you thought about using this particular building without?
Stop so long. So I want to. Come on to the hot seat, buddy. If you need me to translate, just let me know. Talk slow.
Bonjour.
Yes, it's a very good question. Is how to maybe change the design of downstairs to make it more palatable and have an operating kitchen. Well, it's not really designed for it. And that's something we came up with in the discussion. Is like, can we fully modify what we have, I would say, the downstairs area? Safe, it's not going to be codes, and us thinking it to turn it into a safe operating environment for our employees, but also for new members to come and dine downstairs. Doesn't really work. And it's after that thinking about where is the gym, where is the gym going? There is a lot of different steps, and the safest route is to have a different structure where we can use the food preparation, receiving, and operations. That's how we feel, and I fully understand behind that decision.
We have Spencer here.
Morning. So this might wrap up a few collective questions. The way I recall the last meeting going, where we all got into a tour of the kitchen, was we were told to expect an A and B C option, something, and multiple options. So my question is, we've got this blank check option, which is beautiful, but at what point are we going to be discussing the difference in what we want and what we need? Where are these B and C options discussed? Is that we can kind of evaluate what do we really want this with.
What I would say is that you'll have a chance in the survey to express exactly what your appetite is for this particular concept. And if what I would expect is if the majority of the community needs a hard pivot on options, then what we're looking for is suggestions. There's probably been more work than you anticipate on looking at the logistics of different options. Started off with the peninsula, and that was canceled. Then it was like, how do we just expand the kitchen? And then the logistics, the safety, the code, the issues with that. We considered the downstairs. The cost savings on that preliminary was probably not as much as you would think because of the retrofit and then moving the gym somewhere, because the community, that's one of the most widely used facilities is the gym downstairs. So options are going to be driven by surveys and feedback, And will be a community decision on how we get on those options. Come on up. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. Okay. Just as a comparison, I would like to know how much in the red our canteen negatively generates. And I remember we asked this at last town meeting, couldn't be answered. And I somehow remember in 2022, and this is counting not just all the food, everything included. So talking salary, wages, hourly wages. In 2022, I remember a number like 175,000 here in the red just in the canteen. So what, do you have any projection, and how much was 2023?
I will say this, unfortunately, Crescent set this up as a taxable entity. So our goal is to not make any money. We want to be, we want to pay.
You can reduce,
Yeah.
yeah, but you can reduce our dues and not make a profit.
That's an option. That is an option.
So when I joined last year, I noticed there's a lot of activity here during the summer and not much during the winter time. And yes, what it does affect is we don't work. We're trying to change the models since I'm here to hire more part-time employees, a smaller core of full-time employees to lower our expenses. Second is also working on food waste. Food waste when I joined was quite high. Now we have it under control and we are becoming profitable. And we are still having quite accessible and friendly prices. If you come and join us for lunch or dinner here, you can also notice the price of a wine bottle here is your grocery stores. It's for members because you are all members. With that said, winter time has been slow. That's why we've been trying to implement more and more special dinners on the weekends at a higher price level where the profits are, margins are much higher. We are working on it. But it cannot be, I don't want it to flip from a burger at $8 become a burger at $14. I don't know who is going to show up. So we have to incrementally make changes, educating our staff on how to operate better with food waste, food control, and us and you members. What is your, and I believe it's in the survey, what is your budget? What are you looking for? And what is our source of revenues we could have? Is also is a question of how to turn a kitchen operation. Well, with that said, I'm meaning cater events. I also mean to-go meals that we can create a menu, ordering online, asking to pick it up on Friday afternoon when you're coming from Charlotte or near the cities around the lake or close to the lake and have dinner ready to go. So I am working diligently because I understand the concept of profit, yes. And that's what I'm implementing gently, but it's happening. So to answer your question, the exact numbers, I don't have it yet. I just started back in September. Give me a full season and I will have really good numbers. Thank you.
Feeling some frustration, and I've heard lots of different things, and I just want everybody to understand kind of, it's a chicken and egg thing, so I get the frustration with some people like, oh, why did you go so far? Why'd you put this together and things like that? But to Spencer's point, your point, there's no good conversation to be had until you have a strong man. I mean, can we all agree, you've got to do something. And so we spent very, very little money with the board's approval to work with Bruce to make sure that because I'd heard some people say they want the camp to stay camp. And so, we try to work with the right, before you even have a strong man to even throw darts at, right? You can't do that. So I hope people don't understand that this isn't a foregone conclusion. Just because we put this together and then we spend a teeny tiny bit of money to digitize it, which actually I think helps a lot, so that we can get your guys' feedback on a concept so you can see okay, if we were gonna do something that meets all the criteria, because that's something else that Bruce did a really good job with us. He said, don't worry about anything right now. What do you need? Okay, we need faster food times. We need more variety. You know, we took that list and said, what's everybody's whole groups? And we looked at different concepts and all of the things that we heard throughout the community. And then he put, helped us put something together. And we even talked about Expo too. So, can we utilize what we already have? And speaking with everyone, you're right. I mean, we went through all the different options and we couldn't do it. And so the A, B, and C kind of turned out to, well, A is go back to sandwiches, but we can get things out faster. B might be, I don't know what. And then maybe C is this, but without a C, all that happens is everybody's like, oh, it's going to cost 30 million, or it's going to cost this, or it's going to cost this. So really the reason that this was all done, and again, it was done very, so that we have a strong man, so we can say, hey, this is the concept. Oh yeah, I really don't like the walkway, or no, I don't want that. At least we have something to throw darts at. But this is not a foregone conclusion. So I hope people can understand and take this presentation for what it's worth, which is, tell us what you think of this. Like, this would be our seat. And do people like it? And then we at least have something to vote on, because now we've got better costs. If we know what we're talking about, if people hate this and we have to go a different direction, at least we can start talking about it. And so that's really why this was done. First of all, we don't know whether it's 49% of people are against this. We really don't. I mean, like he said, there's a very, very vocal group of people that have said, and they maybe believe it's 50, maybe they believe it's 75. We don't actually know until, again, we have a straw man that we can all go vote on. And so I want to make sure everybody's aware of that. And that's really why this was done. So again, chicken and the egg. Until we have a concept, we can't have a good discussion, right? So that's.
I have a question about the parking. You mentioned about there's going to be a parking area if we do this. Also, it was mentioned this is 20% of the camp. And you can see we're crazy all the way up the hill for parking. I just want to know, if we do this, what's the situation with the parking? Is it going to be multi-level? Is it going to be, what is it?
I think,
I had an opportunity with Joanne Dale on her. She's here. She's our liaison from, there you go, Joanne. She's our liaison with the finance committee. One of the things that she asked me, we met for about an hour the other day, is what other things are part of this? So we don't just make this decision in a vacuum. The number one thing was parking. So I think it's pretty obvious that we need probably a lower parking lot. That is not really within our jurisdiction, but it is part of the site plan that Bruce developed, so you don't have to walk up the hill. So we have to get with graders, landscapers, et cetera. But one of the things as part of the site plan is to address the additional parking that's required. Now, whether you blame the overall FBX expansion for that additional cost, or you do it anywhere, anyway, it is part of the plan.
And it won't be a multi-level parking deck.
I have two related questions. First of all, do we have a ballpark figure of what this would cost? And second, have you considered the possibility of making one new building for the kitchen services and continuing to use this building for dining?
You might want to stay up there.
I'm sorry, no.
So a couple of things, there's been a lot of surveys. At one particular point, though, the number 2 major issue was climate controlled facility, and the number 3 issue was a separate facility for adults. Now, that does not mean that this facility is adults only, but those are the second, third issue for what it's worth. So this issue, to Danielle's point, was really the C option. It sort of wrapped everything in together. We will run numbers on what it would be to just have a commercial kitchen with additional things. I think that would make sense. Obviously, what also other people have said is, don't do that option and then 18 months later break ground on what you probably should have done in the first place. But I do think we'll have a responsibility to go to the board with multiple options that figures out, what are we addressing from a capacity, lead time, quality, et cetera. So that's what we're thinking.
Yeah, my question is around the voting process for the straw man. Are we gonna have a 3/4 majority requirement to approve the straw man, and how will that, be governed, and how will it be administered?
Tom, you want to take that?
For a minute there, I was gonna get away without having to speak. The answer to who has the legal right to approve, construction of improvements is, it's a board decision. Practically how the board individually votes, his or her vote, it's up to them, but, under the governing documents and the law, it's a board decision.
So. Thanks, one second. What does that mean exactly? So are you saying that by 5 members, they can take on $7.5 million worth of debt?
No, the question was to build the improvements, who approves the construction, not how you finance. So for example, the debt is specifically the bylaws.
Perhaps you could walk us through
Sure.
what you imagine happening if it's approved at a board level to go forward.
So, Dam Lake James Master Recreational Association Incorporated is a North Carolina nonprofit corporation. It's governed by the Nonprofit Corporation Act, which is Chapter 55A. It's also subject to the Planned Community Act, which is Chapter 47F. And what both of those say is that the board of directors manages and controls the corporation and specifically has the power to construct additional improvements. There's nothing in the bylaws or declaration that says anything otherwise. So the board of directors, as far as approval of what to buy, what to build, is a board decision.
Can you take it then to the next step as to how that gets funded?
How it gets
I mean,
funded?
it's one thing to say, we'd like to do it.
Right.
It's another thing to pay.
Sure. Well, you have to decide how you're going to pay for it, and then you have to analyze what the options were, and there's various options for assessments, for debt, for
Right.
licenses. I mean, it's far beyond what.
Right, so in the special assessment provision, it talks specifically about adding anything that wasn't originally put in by the declaration. And that has to be covered by a special assessment, and thereby that would be a 67%.
So you're talking about Article 6, Section 5 of the Declaration, right? That's not what it says. What it says is that the association may make a special assessment for purposes of constructing additional improvements. What it doesn't say is that the only way to pay for that is through a special assessment.
I get
You're
that.
flipping it around backwards.
I get that, but where would this money come from in the hypothetical
That's not
situation? Pardon me?
That's not up to me. That's,
Okay,
I'm just
but I
answering
mean,
the legal
we
question.
must have thought about this, right?
Does that what you voted on prior?
You guys are getting way deep into legal here.
The board can't do anything unless we vote on it.
No, that's not true. So the
What the
plan,
hell do we have here? Is this not a democracy?
Okay, here's the difference. You have a professional that's giving the legal, interpretation of the law, period. How the board chooses to act is a separate discussion. You're confusing the two, right? It's far more. He's giving you the exact, everybody's got all this opinion about what it's going to take to be from a legal perspective. He just gave it to you. The second decision is what the board chooses to do from a majority perspective before they act on something.
That's what we need to understand. That's, we have to approve.
if you want to read chapter 47F,
Why
section,
do we
article
have
section
surveys?
2.
Why do we have surveys? Don't we get to vote on what we are going to pay for?
I think because the spirit of the board is we want to represent the majority. That's it. The board doesn't even know how they will vote on this at this time because we don't have the numbers to be able to vote on it. So we have to come up, we have to sort of ascertain the level of funding that would be needed. And frankly, the board hasn't decided whether or not they would even want to pursue something like that.
So 20% of the people in the development want this. 80% don't. The board can do whatever the hell they want. Is that what you're telling me?
Why don't you walk up to the microphone and speak so we can hear everything clearly?
Sorry. I thought I was loud enough.
You've got the points.
Just here to talk about. The rub-
From the top, where the board made a decision. I think fiscal law, things like that. Walk through the process of how the board decided to do that, and how we decided to fund it. This is what I'm understanding. Is that correct?
I was not on the board at that time, so I'm not sure how the decision.
So if you could give an example, maybe Randy can do that, if you can tell the board sometimes, and help people understand how the board makes a decision on something that we've already had, and then how it got decided upon to go forward. Okay, I think that would help.
My understanding is that the board got legal advice on what they could and couldn't do and made that decision. Yeah.
We had a vote.
There was a vote. I'm saying there was a vote. Come on up.
I understand there are needs there once, and it sounds like something with the kitchen facilities is a need. I mean, we have to do that. We're not even right now. And then we have the wants, so we're talking about aids. And again, I guess it goes back to the previous question about, is it fundable? So we can do whatever we have to do to fund the building. How do we keep funding? And what does that look like? Has anybody done pro formas in terms of what kind of tracking we would have to have and how much? I mean, we don't come down here a lot, but unfortunately, now hopefully retired. So, but when I go down to the week, I think it's hardly the only people doing it. And so my concern is, does this become sort of an albatross around the neck of everybody who's a member? Right, even before is some projected financials. Here's what it looks like. Year 1, year 2, year 3. But I think right now it's kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit, except for which is the vision facility.
What Danielle had said was, we don't know what the participation of the camp would be if a climate control facility is here. That will be one of the questions in the survey. Will we use it more? How much will you spend? There's going to be some financial questions in the survey that you all participate in. And it may not be financially feasible. If the majority of the people say they won't use it, even if it has more food and it's climate control. So we can't come up with a program. This is just a very preliminary concept of a solution, of one potential solution. And what's going to drive it is going to be the community to participate in that financially and from a utilization standpoint. We don't know that yet. So there's nothing that's been done. No decisions have been made on any of that yet. The survey will drive a lot of that. And it may require a hard pivot based upon feedback from the community. Come on up.
I think
Come on up.
All right, I'm a newbie. So we only bought our home 4 years ago, so there's a lot we don't know. So first of all, please don't take offense to anything I'm gonna say, because I feel like I'm in the minority here. But the one thing that we enjoy is coming here to camp. We didn't like the times to be better. The surveys have said for how many years that everybody that uses that wants an improvement. I like the fact that you're talking about an A, you don't know the B, there's a C. You're looking at all options. I mean, we elected these people to do their job. And I appreciate the fact that they're all volunteers, but I would like to see some improvements. That's what the surveys tell me. And we like to use this place. We don't use it as much as we would. I would use it a lot more if we were able to have more variety. I'm not faulting those people back there. When I took that tour, I was shocked, totally shocked that they do what they do in that small space. It's unfair to them. So I want something.
Thank you.
I think that everybody, there's a lot of people here that seem to be like it's a thing against us. We are not your elected board. We are just a committee. And put our time in as the was on the board for 3 years. It's incredibly sad how people in these are treated. I see it with all the people that are on there. These people are trying their best. You might like them, you might not like them, you might agree with them, you might disagree with them. They ran, they won, and they are volunteering the time. If you want change, vote differently or run for the board. That's what I'm saying. But as far as this goes, as Victoria said, okay, we didn't just come upon this like lightly. I started with Michael in 2022 in June, and I went to Grandfather Country Club, Elk River Club, Mountain Air Club, and the Beach Mountain Club, and talked to all of their chefs and managers to figure out the best solution. This might not be the best solution. This is what this committee came up with in the face of people saying year over year over year that we need a change. Yes, we'd love to hear them. These people shaking their heads and acting like we're shoving this down your throat. We're not. We're trying to figure out what the next step is. We don't know the funding yet. There are several options. When we get there, the board's, I'm just going to say this, is not allowed, I don't believe, to assess you without the vote. Okay. If they find another way to fund it, that's a board decision. Okay, but we are here together as neighbors. Let's try to be neighborly and figure out a solution to the food problem. We can't hire people because nobody wants to work in a 288 square foot sweat kitchen. Okay? Nobody comes here because you don't want to wait an hour for the I haven't done the study, more revenue if we had people who were able to get your food faster. If we could get better people, more people, not better people, because we had a better facility. We did look at the expo, we looked at the base, we looked at everything you can think of. We're not stupid people. We've been working on this for years. We're not perfect, and we didn't come up with maybe the perfect solution for you, but it's one option, and we will come up with more if we need to. So instead of getting angry and so upset, say thank you to the people who have put, I'm proud of the work we did. I didn't really know. I want a restaurant. I want to pay a fortune for it. So I am not saying that you should all agree with this. Okay, but this is volunteers trying to help you with the things that people have said they want. If you don't want it, you'll have a chance to voice that. But it doesn't have to be hostile. It doesn't have to be nasty. Okay, we are all neighbors. It's not neighborly.
When we moved here 13 years ago, we didn't move here for Club Lake James, Lake James the resort, or Lake James the spa. We moved here for Camp Lake James. And I think we need to look at the whole vision of Lake James. Do we want to turn this into a country club, which is what this kind of looks like to me with all the cement, new parking lots and doing away with the nature and so forth? Or do we want to utilize what the vision was? I don't know about you, but that's why we moved here 13 years ago with our family, with our businesses.
Also, I didn't know. I'm sorry.
My question is are we opening this to the public? Is that part of where you get the funding and,
We're talking about
in your,
yes.
So the
The question was whether it's to be open to the public. The answer is no. The declaration, our bylaws don't allow for us to be open to the public, and our ABC permits don't, or there's going to be a private public. Good morning. So this may be a little redundant. Thank you, newbie. I'm somewhat a newbie as well. I want to, and you were saying it would be similar to thank, I want to thank you because this team, I think what you present, I think you respect everyone's good, but I think this is wonderful. You know, and as I come up here not all the time. I come up here on busy times, and I'm in this, you know, people waiting for a hot dog, waiting for a sandwich, and everyone's getting mad, and everyone's hollering at the staff, and that's not the way to treat people. You know, we cannot expect this to support what this community is becoming. And by the way, look around. This is one of the most beautiful places in North Carolina, right? And when I come up here with my family, when I get the precious time to do that on a weekend in the summer, which I love more than anything, I want to be able to just go, not have to pack every meal to come up, you know, and have all this stuff. I hope the food truck is at Monteflora. It is so nice to come in here. The Sun Mother's Easter brunch that the team put together. I happened to be here for that. Wonderful. But do y'all know what they had to go through to make that such a wonderful? It's not fair to the staff, it's not fair to the people that are working here. They have to have a facility. So I think I get that. I want to thank you for putting something together that is fantastic. And one last thing, Lifetime Fitness Gold Gym, whatever golf club, country club, wherever any of you may have memberships elsewhere or had them in the past, you know, you trust the board to make the decisions, to continue to make it a wonderful place. And I think that's what they're trying to do. Whatever it ends up, it's going to end up. But thank you. And I think we need to improve to just keep up. So appreciate it.
So I appreciate you being able to say that. And I know you guys have been working this committee. I think the problem is it looked like this is an all or nothing option. So this is the Cadillac solution. And I know you guys looked at other things, but you haven't really discussed what else has been looked at and what has been rejected and why. I think this looks like a very expensive thing. I worry that most of us, if you look at who's here all year round, it's a small portion of the people that live here. You know, wildlife, for example, 60% of the people are just part-timers. So they're not going to be around in the wintertime. And this is going to be a very expensive facility with staffing needs and I don't think it's going to be used other than about 5 months during the year. So I would appreciate it if you guys in the committee would help us understand what other options we've looked at and really give us choices. Yeah, we talked about ABC, but all we're looking at is a very big, very expensive, not just the bill, but and by the way, what are we going to do in the next 2 or 3 years? This is not going to happen overnight. And people are unhappy with the food service. What are they going to do for the next 2 or 3 years while we're waiting? So that's.
Yeah, listen, thank you very much for that. I think there's a couple things. Number one, in terms of the process, chicken egg, whatever you want to call it. First and foremost, you know, we really, as Bruce said, we only have a conceptual design. There's really nothing you can do to go to a quote, not even a quote, a cost estimate from there. The next thing we do for a nominal amount of money is you would do some sort of schematic design. That's a detailed enough drawing you can actually hand to a builder that can produce some sort of cost estimate within probably 5 or 10%. Now, for the first time ever, we actually have something to talk about. I mean, the reality is whether you like that or not, now you have a design. Probably at that point in time, I've already discussed how you would fund it. Now you can have a real discussion or even debate. So that's the process that we'd like to go through. I think in terms of an A, B, and C option, we ran preliminary numbers, but it doesn't matter. It comes back with a survey. We're somewhere near like 80 or 90 members that are here full time. Everybody's talking about the operating costs. They're also not talking about the increased revenues. As an example, I live here full time. There's no way on a February afternoon I'm coming over here for a beer. It is freezing. And if it was a climate controlled environment, I think the place might. So the reality is we have a lot of work to do, but from a process perspective, the next step is to get a schematic design that informs some sort of cost estimate that starts to look at what real financing could be. That's not even, that's still preliminary, but at that particular point in time, you could have a real discussion.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yes, I agree first with the remarks about what's happening in the next 3 years, because this building is not gonna raise in 2 nights. It's, yes, working with what we have, working with a 288 square feet kitchen where the vents is near the AC. So basically, the AC, cold air generated by the AC, disappears as soon as it's created. It's an oven in the summer. I wouldn't allow my daughters to work here. I'm trying, with the support of our board members, to contemplate options to short the lines, make it a better place environments for our employees. Downstairs, we have a flat kitchen, and when I say flat kitchen, it's only a domestic, so household stove. We cannot put a commercial stove. We have a sink, a 3-sink compartment, and a dishwasher, because what we have here in this tiny kitchen is too small and is not sanitary, meaning that why now we are offering a because we can wash them safely downstairs and dry them safely, air dried, not with a towel, for example. So these are those steps that we are incrementing to be able to accommodate safer, so a safer, better washed utensils and so on. In the meantime, we also jumped on a project at the Expo and built also a street and are currently expanding the refrigeration for the beer taps and also for saving, storing food at the Expo. So we have a 7x7 working cooler being built. In addition to it, we have also running water inside of the Expo, so we can have a 3-sink compartment to properly wash. So basically, it's suds, rinse, sanitize, which is very, it's the 3 steps essentially, but very important for knives, cutting boards, plates, and so on. In addition to it, we have a grease trap, so when we wash, it doesn't clog our how do you call it? Septic, thank you. Sorry for the missing word in English. Last is we will also have a dishwasher, a smaller size dishwasher, again to sanitize, high heat. So we are taking the steps. However, at some point, demand is going to be the demand during the summer is going to max it out again. And last is I forgot, we also building so our employees can work in a cooler environments, because during the summer it's wonderful inside. So all these steps are being studied and they are moderately adequate. I want to attract talent. Okay, it's like we have a new chef. Chef Ryan over here. We are partnering to make this place better. We are planning on breaking on, but at some point, it's still 288 square feet with the hot and vent near each other. So these are, you can hear there's a little bit of frustration because I want the best for you members, but I also want the best for our employees. So they stay here. So we attract talent. So we become the employer of choice around the lake. And we can. It's just a little difficult with what we have right now. On the cost. Yeah, cost is, I've run a business. We in the food industry, part-time is standards. So it's not, the plan is to keep maybe one more person, but I don't foresee more than 3 to 4 full-time employees here. There's money for it. We do part-time. We becoming an employer of choice, meaning that we have high standards, they know what they are coming from, They enjoy the company of members, serving members, and trust me, people want to work for employers that are, and you all know that, talented, that can, help developing young teenagers, giving them good structures, advices. Maybe they're gonna make it a career choice. Maybe they're gonna discover, like my daughter, I'm not working in the food industry whatsoever. It and older teenagers here as part-time employees. We had a 4-course city dinner during the fall we stuck. I was 3 employees. One is here today, is Eli. Eli never served his knife. Eli never picked up the plate from the left, serve from the left, and pick up from the right. They learned that night. It was a great experience for the one who came, I believe. I tremendously enjoyed creating the menu and seeing how it turned to be. And events like that are a great teaching experience. Even our staff, before we practiced, we took pictures, we put pictures on the walls, and we lined up 20 plates, and made it happen, build the plates. And I believe for me, it was very memorable. I was very proud of being able to accomplish something like that. And how did we do it? Well, we had a kitchen downstairs, a prep kitchen here, and we are flipping one does one course, and the one downstairs does the other, and we rotate it for the whole evening. What I'm trying to say is that, yes, we can attract more talents with, the team, and I believe the teams here makes it happen, and it's the cost of your labor. It's just us being working in a better facilities that gives us efficiency. Because going upstairs and downstairs at my age might need us. It's efficiency. It's like instead of the stove is so small down here, I have to reheat downstairs in a hot box here to keep the film warm, to keep the food warm. Sorry, because the oven here is smaller than the one you have at home. It's not hot. So these are all the issues that makes it complicated, that makes it less attractive for part-time employees, but also to retain the full-time employees. Because at some point, say, I'm done. We don't have a stove here to work. Any talented chef wants to make a sauce. Well, there's no stove to make a sauce, for example. So all these little things that sounds maybe futile to you makes it hard when you're in the food industry.
What did he say? I think I've heard twice the question of what else did you think of? So maybe we can help me brainstorm about what we thought about in addition to this. So one was we were going to put the kitchen up top where the game room is. That obviously doesn't ceiling anyway. We looked at tearing out the offices and putting the kitchen back there. We looked at putting a facility on the peninsula, which doesn't work because of getting things like utilities down there and parking. We looked at putting a kitchen and sales house. You can't just push out the back here because all the utilities for the building come into there. There's gas, the sewer lines run through there, the big power switch here, whatever you want. What else we looked at? We looked at just doing the expo as a basement. We talked about putting something up by pickleball courts. What else do we think of? That's it. So we've considered a lot of different things. We don't have time to go through all the reasons it work, but for various reasons, there was something about them that didn't make work, whether it was cost, logistics, feasibility, codes, scale, right?
So I'm on researching the options for facilities and for what could be built, what could be constructed to resolve I think an issue. You also said very candidly a few minutes ago, we don't know what the capacity might. We really don't know what people want. So I think probably a lot of us feel some trepidation and anxiety over it didn't look that they will come as nerve-wracking. So can you maybe talk a little bit more about what's going to be in this survey to really get us to, do you have the right business and Awesome people are here. I'm getting details, not just on somebody would like better food, like organic, or like a white tablecloth candlelit dinner or a bar, or these things, but how many days a week you're here? How many months out of the year are you not here at all? How many people are in your household?
In your mailbox right now, all of you can open it, it's in your email right now.
It's a very, it addresses all, yes, a very comprehensive, even talks about numbers. So good point. We're not to be careful.
I
That's right.
appreciate your advice.
That's a great question.
I've been working.
Yeah, but also, as you brought up something, the other thing I want to mention is, we don't know what this looks like, as far as, you know, we've been reluctant, as most of you know, to say restaurant. It is a covered, heated food facility of what we came up with. Got there because I think most people, not everybody, most people, once you start the kitchen, then you think, wow, we're gonna have this great kitchen that can produce maybe take-home meals or better meals or whatever, faster meals. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to eat that in a place? That's how we got here. Right? End up being whatever. There's lots of options there. But we don't know if this is, we don't think this is, you go sit at a table and you get waited on. I think this is more, maybe, like a moment where you go out and you order, get same kind of concept here, but better, faster. We're not saying we're gonna hire, 10 people to and you can have all this. That's just where we came. And so one of the things that happened in all those visits was that when I talked to people, every single one of them said, whatever you do, build a bigger bar. Even if you don't have one, build a bigger bar. That's where people congregate. It's like when you go to a party and everybody ends up in the kitchen. And what it does is it allows people that are sitting down to have a more private, intimate dinner or whatever, than having everybody standing around them like happens now at the expo. We have a few seats, a few people get to sit, and the rest of us stand around them, and sort of people who are trying to eat can't even really eat because we're all standing around them. So that's how we got here. But as to Amy's question, as far as, white tip, whatever you said, I get it. We don't know yet. That's going to be up to the community, what it looks like, not up to this committee. So that's.
I want all the body.
Like Amy, I've got a question about the survey. And I've worked with surveys a lot and I've written basically I hate them. But it's extremely difficult of a survey. Extremely difficult. I'll give an example. We did a survey here when we came back. There's a segment that's strongly in favor of restaurant. And then there's the second group. Okay? But in both of those questions, there was no cost associated with that. So I'm saying both of those answers are useless because we don't know I may want a restaurant, yeah, great idea. But what is the cost? So I was going to say in this next survey that we may be allowed to late, but could we send that survey to a sample group, a small sample group, and maybe make some adjustments to the survey? Whatever. Maybe we'll do that anyway. Thank you. Thank you for everything that's stated so far.
Can I just say something about the survey? So, hi, I'm Jenny Smith. And the survey is going to the primary email address. There's only one per member. If you have multiple lots, in the beginning, it'll ask you to indicate what your lot number is. We did the best we could with the survey. We sent it around to different board members. We did samples, like just within, I mean, listen, we tried our best. But is it a this is the start. It's not the only survey. It's just the start. And there's really no good answer because like now, like Larry said, how do you send a survey without numbers? well, you can't send numbers until you get this. Then we get yelled at for doing this because we spent money to actually get here, even though it wasn't that much. But do you understand what I'm saying? Like, we can't win because you have to go through a process to be able to get you to a point where you have numbers to send out to ask if you all would approve it. So we did our best. If you don't get the, please contact Chris in the office or somebody in the office. It more than likely it may be sitting in your spam folder or something. But like I said, it's only going to primary email addresses, so that might be the issue also. The survey is simply to gather information, and more than likely there will be other surveys. If we get, the idea was to start a survey people that want to continue, then we go forward and we can go forward and get an actual number to send out in another survey to ask you to actually to get to the point where we can get to a vote. This is just a process. So I'm just asking that you all just, I understand the rhetoric is high and that some people are upset, but I am the one who gets the emails, I get the texts, I get the conversations when I come here. I didn't have French fries with my meal. They ran out of this. We had one weekend, we went through 30 bags of fries. We don't have enough freezers to have more than 30 bags of fries. So they run out, and then somebody's upset because they don't have French fries. And so on Sunday, when I open up, I'm going to church and I opened it up and I got 3 emails that I waited for 4 hours for my food. So everybody here that says that, you know, that there's people that you know, that food's not that important, I'm the person that gets all of the complaints. So I get it. I get the money portion, but we're just trying to come up. But frankly, I don't use the pool. I don't swim. But that didn't mean that we didn't have to fix the pool because it's an amenity for the camp. And we all need a place that has a pool. And everybody here, yes, you bought into a place that has food. So now everybody wants better food. And we sort of got spoiled with COVID. And so I don't know. There's no really great answer. We're just doing the best that we can. So. And what I really need to understand, and I agree that you have to start somewhere. I appreciate that. Got to start somewhere. I need to, I'm sure that people need to understand your process of starting here and then how do you make a decision? We are not readers of the CCR, so we do not know all the different rules. That's why I asked, what is our process for doing the pickleball courts or the, you know, the dots and things like that, so we can understand and become educated on. Start here, what's the next step, what's the next step, how do you end up voting? Because when you say the word vote, people are going to think that they need to vote, and now they need to you guys need to vote. So if you can make that process clearer to us, without anybody getting upset and angry and yelling, you know, I think it would help us to know where we're headed and how we live.
Well, I think your experiences with this. Well, we don't know what the end is.
Can we get Randy together?
Who wants to take over the pickleball? Anybody want to take the pickleball from another?
Can you come down here, Randy?
Danielle was on.
Yeah, part of the problem with the board, if you serve 3-year terms, is 3 years if somebody wasn't on there 3 years ago. And so there's only a couple of us, myself and Ryan, that are more or less consistent and remember things that happen. So with the pickleball courts and the docks were all wrapped up into a package. We did request a member vote and it was approved. I don't remember the vote, but it was approved. That allows the board then authorize spending the money, borrowed money from a bank and constructed what you see here. And bought the new dock. So in that instance, because it was a loan, we did go out and had to get a member vote, and we included in it, do you want to actually build the thing? And it was approved.
Quick question. So if we understand something has to be done with the kitchen, okay, that, it sounds to me like that is untenable even in the mid-long term. And if we're gonna have the services, even continue the services that we need. Has there been any thought of what this would look like? And maybe if we were to do this in stages, so kitchen first, I understand it's always cleaner to just do the whole thing and there we are. But by that time, you've already bought the elephant that you're dealing with. But what, to move this project along in stages so that we get the things, like we said, we have needs and we have wants. So it sounds to me like the kitchen is a need. We have to have that. So is this design conducive to something like that where we could have the kitchen now? But my other concern is if we get all wrapped up in going back and forth on this large project and then nothing ever gets done, you know, 2 years from now, everybody's left because we're not working in this mess. So how do we get some progress of understanding that this may not be the be all end all, but
Oh, I can, one second. And build projects in stages. And of course, this would probably work pretty well for stages, except that because of the site and the slope, and you knew you were going to build the restaurant part sometime in the future, you couldn't build the foundation in a separate stage. So right off the bat, you've got to build a 5,000 square foot concrete foundation. And you can put the kitchen on part of that. But what in the world do you put on the other 3,000 square feet? A temporary floor? And not just the restaurant, but most projects that are built in stages. When you build something, let's say you start something to build next year or in the end of this year. And many of you build houses. Right now, you can't build a house anywhere in this area for less than $500 a square foot. And that's a very preliminary. That wouldn't apply to a commercial facility, but if you build something 2 years from now to finish it out, there's no telling what that number would be. So if you decide as a community that you want to build a kitchen separately and a restaurant, that could certainly be done, but it couldn't be done with this building. You would have to start the program and then the design, knowing that, and you design it so that it could easily be added to.
Andrea, in your research, with the other clubs, did you compare numbers of members? Because we have, you know, I guess a fairly low number, kind of a, that's even my right there on the, but, in terms of number, it's a, yeah.
So we built some that were much bigger, I don't know about the but again, they have 7 eating facilities. I mean, they're much bigger, but they have 7 things.
So it's hard to find something our size, really, honestly, without golf, without stuff. So we did do, Michael's looked, I've looked, we've all looked when we've gone other places. For instance, my daughter got married in Ohio at a club that is just a club, right? And they don't even have homes, but they have about as many members as we do, right? So we looked, I talked to someone that people, and it's a matter of what can sustain it. To be fair, my first thought was the stages. It doesn't economically really make sense, and construction wise, as far as having a disruption, it's longer. But you know, we're all open to all these different suggestions. It would be different looking probably than what we have, but we could do it. But I think what we wanted to say is that we trusting Sylvan right now a little bit too, in that he's worked in the industry and he's saying with better times, food, everything, we will generate more income. I mean, I can't say that that's true or false myself, but we can do studies and we can do things, but that's where we're heading is if you have to build it, they will come sort of concept, right? We're here. I'm considered a part-timer, I guess, I'm here most of the time, and I personally would eat. And I keep teasing my husband that it's one vote per household, so only the person who cooks will get to vote, right? Because I did look at that, but it is very difficult to find a club our size. But
And the building, I've got numbers in there on ranges of financial appetite support. So the first stage, I would expect further surveys that would further clarify based upon that survey. Anyone else? So one more. Reach your hand.
Good morning, my name is Mark Kirby. I'm part of the old wildlife. The question I have is a food service project establishment such as Camp Lake James. Start with member survey, gathering of information, usage data, preferences for food. That would get rolled into the program for the design. That's called the program. That program would have already studied cost of meals potentially, what a budget for a place like this can afford, just in general, to work type of food service project. That would also include probably some options, small, medium, large, depending on what the budget estimates initially would show. And that would then translate into design of designs that was done today. Members, which is user group space. There's one, and so I didn't see a lot of information today in the presentation as far as the program. Generally, the program is developed by the owner, not the designer. You can hire designers to do that. But really, the information, the background information, is only the owner understands to provide.
Get closer to the mic, please.
So,
Thank you.
the question is, I see people concerned about the cost of this. And rightly so. And people want to spend money wisely. Can, I guess, more information provided on these all three projects that were put by the wayside because we may or may not be able to afford this. And so to come out with options, it doesn't matter if you see, there are other options I think that are important to explain, express, and understand so that people have an option to the choice. And it relates back always to finance. I think the other thing is the good news is we have a group that's in human resources. And even if we can afford a project such as this, will we ever be able to have staffing? Up to now, we've not been able to do that. Part of what has happened is just been turnover in everything. A food service project, very important. And it starts with, I think, the food that's member input. A chef then reacts to that. They develop menus that are priced appropriately. That determines then what equipment goes to the kitchen exactly, which you don't just run a kitchen. And then that gets back to how it can produce, how many people it takes to produce this food. And be done according to the budget. It's affordable in the long term to the camp to operate. And so I think from what I've seen today, not a lot of that has been done. So that leads to a lot of concerns or questions about what the potential really is, what the potential costs are.
So I guess the question is, I'm not convinced of myself to see whether or not this is the next step. But I didn't see a budget step. It's based on some estimate, you can always estimate at a state